Hi, I'm Hannah Wallace and you're watching Finextra TV at Sibos. Welcome to our virtual studio. Calling in now is Francis Walvik-Joynt, Senior Vice President of NETS, and we're going to be talking about responsible innovation and banking for humanity. Hi Paul, thank you very much for calling in. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you. Excited about this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic and very relevant today, especially as most of us would agree that banking and access to financial tools is a basic human right. And yet, I think you've pointed this out before, billions still remain unbanked. So could you set the scene for us and explain what's going on here and what are the causes and some of the negative effects this is having on society as a whole, maybe?
Well, banking and access to financial tools is something that should be a basic human right. Yet there's a couple of billion adults and others that remain unbanked and without access to the legitimate financial system. There is a number of negative effects on this. They rarely have any savings or have a chance to do savings. They get no chance of getting loans, hard to pay bills, excluded from jobs, harder to access housing. They can't show that they have any financial history. And some of the causes of this is that a lot of our products are not fitting to all social and age classes. There's also, in a lot of parts of the world, basic lack of trust in the financial system. But I think the most key and important thing is that there's lack of knowledge and financial education. You can see that there's a lot of access to digital instruments now, but I think fundamentally, a lot of the unbanked, they often go into unregulated territory, and that is a pretty dark place to be. And what happens in society is, we want to have goods moving. We want to have people to interact, even in these strange times. And so there's a big part of the wheel of society which sort of is constantly hitting a hump in the road and causing, the effects of not getting the full potential of what we could do as humanity and in society.
So I think it's fair to say then the financial industry has a pretty big responsibility to maybe meet those needs and fill in the gaps. But I think the big question, and it's not an easy one, is how do we go about doing this?
Yeah, that's you always have big questions, Hannah. So let's see if we can try to fit something sensible into this. The financial industry, we try to ensure that our products are designed for the future. It needs to be fit both for the banked, but also to the and underbanked. And I think what we really have a responsibility to do is develop networks that provide services, but also help educate people in the possibility of new payments means and how to access the financial system. This increases financial inclusion and it increases financial literacy. But how do we do this? Now, one of the key elements is low threshold to enter is really key. And in that respect, I'm rambling on about the education, but education and digitization hand in hand provide some tremendous, opportunities. Opening a bank account at an early age under adult supervision and then building on with education is something that will really have a long-term effect. I remember keenly when I opened my first bank account in the US with Anchor Bank and met the bank manager together with my father and got to put pennies in a piggy bank. That's probably why I'm in financial services, but still. And it also, one of the things that we can do is make it a basic human right to entering the digital society. Your identity needs to be digital and processes are in need of high trust and easy access. And if you look at one of the things that we also can contribute largely to is demand transparency and provide that so that we ensure that the unbanked enter into regulated, transparent, and trustworthy financial services. Because at the end of the day, what's worth doing is worth doing well, and doing good is always worth doing, right? So, and a couple of the things that we've seen in the last years is contributing to this, making things easier and filling the gaps. Instant payments, easy access to bill payments, being transparent around this creates a whole environment of trust, which probably is, really lacking in that segment, which is unbanked, but also can help the existing segments to really understand the potential of where you can go.
No, it's fascinating. And I want to hear a bit more about the challenges then, because how do we do this in a world aiming for total digitisation?
Well, obviously, these are times where we need to keep apart. And historically, trade and commerce have brought people together. But now, in this sort of new normal, financial services and digitization can enable people to stay apart together. So that is arguably one of the greatest contributions that financial services can provide in these difficult times. But I think the real key, when we're aiming for total digitalization, sounds like a big word, but the challenge is to seize the disruption and embrace it. And I've talked about this a lot of times before, but you need to look at it as a total end-to-end effort. Digitization is not an easy route to go, and it's not just a cool interface with a backend that doesn't work. We've seen this in a number of times. Clearing was disrupted by instant payments. PSD2 has disrupted the access to banking data, and mobile solutions have made it, the power of having banking instantly available to ordinary people in every type of scenario. Request to pay is something, new standard, coming in and making, the ease of doing electronic invoices much more clear. So the speed and transparency at which you can provide services like instant payments have been a real key enabler in the digitization. We've worked a lot with our omni-billing solution in order to ensure that creditors and debtors can be speedy, but create transparency in the interaction of how they work with the financial system. Things like real-time reconciliation, use of analytics to help businesses and individuals in how they can make smarter choices and become more fluent in speaking the digital language. Mm-hmm. So, it's back to the education bit.
Sure. Well, it all sounds pretty promising and it all sounds good, but also you've spoken about something that you call the social dilemma before. So I want to talk a bit more about that, which comes as a result of increasing digitalization. So what's meant by this, and also how do we utilize data ethically? Because there's some sort of ethical concerns there, aren't there?
Yeah, I think, it's the talk of the town. A lot of people have seen the social dilemma film, where it's the damage that is caused to society when you exploit users through, what you might want to call surveillance capitalism or data mining, that sometimes can nurture an addiction or use it in politics or whatever. So that's sort of setting the agenda of, some concerns that people have. But I think that if you look at that, you can turn that around and you can use that as a platform for how you can utilize data ethically. And at the end of the day, it's all about what is the decent thing to do. I remember my grandmother used to say that if you don't have anything nice to say about people, then don't say it. You can also apply that in business. If you don't have any good in it for people using your services, you shouldn't be doing it. And again, it comes down to using tools, networks, for the larger gain of large layers of the population. Digitization becomes inclusion because you're part of what is moving and shaping society, empowering people to understand the value of trust which lies in these solutions. And that's why the transparency that you need to create when utilizing data has to be top notch. And that is at the end of it. You empower people to understand the value of trust, and then they will demand that you treat them ethically. So I think it will be a powerful business driver also for the solutions that we provide to be able to do this.
So there's that aspect that payment providers need to take into account, the financial industry needs to take into account. But to sort of summarize for us, what do you think is the ultimate goal for payment providers then moving forward into the future?
Well, you have to, as a business, be profitable. But being profitable today is not enough. You have to be profitable, you have to be sustainable, and that should not go unnoticed. As a business, that is something that you can be proud of and that you should boost. Values and valuation increasingly go hand in hand, and it provides you with a platform on which you can do good and you can do good business. But in a world, for payments companies, in a world where everyone wants to be known, seen, and talked about, it's sort of a little bit of a conundrum, because the biggest goal for a lot of the payment industry is the exact opposite, never to be noticed. If a payment disappears, is gone from the mind of the consumer, and it's a non-event which is embedded into something else, that's a good thing. And this is where we can actually leverage the education about how to use solutions, how this benefits society as a whole, is something where we as payment companies should be present, vocal, and seen as contributing to providing sound, transparent networks that enable business, people, and society to interact digitally, act responsibly, and live sustainably.
Brilliant. Some profound insights there, Paul, as always, and thank you so much for calling in and sharing them. But we'll leave it there for now, and I hope next time we see each other we'll be face to face in the studio. So thanks for calling in.
Thank you.